Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of Found Footage Fridays with my co-host, Tom Reimer.
And what are we talking about today, Angel?
Somehow one we missed from last year. I didn't realize.
But it was new last year, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize until you said that before we started recording. I didn't realize it was that new.
Yep.
And
I
don't remember.
I think this is from a country that we haven't had a found footage film from yet. I think
Swedish. I think you're
Swedish.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think. How did I find this one? Tubi. I think I just randomly found it on Tubi.
Yeah,
I was going through trying to find one for us to talk about, and I was like, well, I told you not to do one, and then then I found this one, and so So the movie we are talking about today is the 2022 found footage film Reportage November.
There it is.
The short synopsis of this: a mysterious death of a mother and the disappearance of her child leads a group of 4 freelance journalists to the outback of Sweden.
Yeah, this one, I feel like this one popped up this month just simply because it has the word November.
Isn't that funny?
Yes.
That wasn't even on purpose for the viewers, or maybe it was.
Maybe that's why it suddenly was out on Tubi. I don't know. I'm not sure that I've heard of it before. Yeah. But it's this was an interesting one. I didn't realize I was going to have to pop on the subtitles before this one got started, but I don't have a problem with that. I actually like seeing all these different found footage movies from all over the world.
Yeah.
We've seen a number from a bunch of different countries, and this one was our first found footage movie from Sweden. If you out there are watching and you're a fan of Swedish found footage, well, this is going to be your episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the concept, I would say the start of the concept was a little different. And then as the movie, this is a movie that I feel like as it went along, got more and more familiar in feel to like some other found footage movies that we could probably name. But I thought overall it's pretty solid. I guess the basic setup, right, is that, and this is not spoilery, this is just the basic setup, is that mother, it's basically like a mockumentary style at first, and then sort of delves into more classic found footage. But there's a story about a mother and then her daughter who go missing in the woods. Unfortunately, eventually the mother was found, had died, and the child was never found. And so this features an investigative team that's been hired to go and do some research and find out what really happened in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. I would say this would fall under things if you like these movies. So if you like, I think it's got some Blair Witch a little bit.
Definitely.
If you liked Devil's Pass, which is another found footage movie, and if you like, what was the other movie it reminded me of? It reminded me of, the setup for The Tunnel. Yeah, so I would say that if you like any of those, the Blair Witch Project, the Devil's Pass, and the Tunnel, I think this is kind of like the love child of all 3 of those films.
Yeah. I would say it starts out more The Tunnel and ends up more Blair Witch.
And Devil's Pass. Yeah.
I see it. I'm not as familiar with Devil's Pass, so maybe that's why I like that.
That's a really good one. That one was on the list for Found Footage Month.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I think the only reason I made a definite point to even watch it and put it on that list was because Tasha had recommended it.
Okay.
And it was
maybe we need to cover that one on this show.
We probably should. It's really good, and it's a winter one, so you know. But yeah, so yeah, I really liked this one too. It did take me, I wouldn't say it's like slow per se, but it did take me a little bit to get into it. But there were some moments once it started going that I was like, okay, I really like this. I like where it went.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's super slow either, but it's definitely not fast moving either. At the beginning, there's a lot of driving in the car and exposition and, them interviewing people. It starts moving pretty quickly once they get to the woods.
Yeah.
And as I say, it becomes pretty familiar, right? How many found footage movies is there's something in the woods and there's what was the other one that we watched recently, where it was in a tent and you thought it was seriously sort of, I don't want to say ripping off Blair Witch, but there was serious Blair Witch in the tent vibes. I can't think of what it was, but
was it the something in the woods? Something walks in the woods.
I think so. Yeah,
With the guy that goes onto the land and he has to get like the permission to go on.
I think there's been a couple we've talked about.
Because there's been a couple like that. Yeah.
Was the Wendigo one? Did that do that too?
Maybe.
We
don't get. I don't think in the Wendigo we got a lot of time in the tents.
Okay.
But I can't remember. But yeah, this felt like definitely, and I know we've said this before, definitely felt like, the makers of this movie were people who were fans of found footage, because there's quite a few found footage tropes throughout the way that the story is presented to us.
Yeah. We won't say what they are just yet, but yeah, definitely some tentage in this movie, like lots of tent scenes. At one point there's the sounds, strange sounds in the woods, and someone goes missing, and almost pretty classic running through the woods, which you've seen a lot of found footage movies. So what I liked about this one, which I thought was different, well, I guess it's not different, but I thought that the grouping was different. We've talked a lot about how it's always two guys and a girl, right?
Yes.
Like every found footage movie gets pretty stale. It's not a huge difference, but this one is two guys and two girls.
A little more balanced,
A little bit more. But I did like it. It did feature interviews at the book ending at the beginning, actually throughout, with survivors, which is a little bit different than some of the movies we talked about, already mentioned today.
Yeah, that's definitely the tunnel pieces, because from the beginning of the movie who does and doesn't make it out because of the interview style.
I thought this was going to be like mockumentary, and they actually use the phrase mockumentary in this movie. They say, this isn't a mockumentary, this is real. I really thought it was going to kind of be more Lake Mungo throughout, sort of like, but it wasn't. It really became just the footage after a bit, which I like. I mean, that's my preference.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that there's a few things in particular that I don't think would have worked as well if they had stuck with more of the other instead of just the footage.
Yeah. So, what did you think? Where do you rate this one?
Yeah, so I liked it. I will say, I think the reason that I'm going to rate it what I rate it has a lot to do with how much it was similar to Devil's Pass, because that's a really great one, and there was just some things about it that reminded me so much of that, and I had been wanting more of it, so I got it in this film. But yeah, no, I liked it. I don't think, I mean, I think as far as weaknesses, the scare elements, I think they did what most found footage movies do. It's a slower setup to start, and then it's boom, 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 all the way to the end,
Yep.
So I wasn't overwhelmingly scared, but there's a couple of really good shots that kind of had me going, oh, ooh, I thought it was believable. I mean, I liked this one. As far as rating, I would give Reportage November, let's say 7 out of 10 tapes.
7. That's fair. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if the scare factor was as high as sometimes I'm looking for these movies.
Sure.
There were some tense scenes and some pretty cool shots of the thing you see, without spoiling it. But beyond that, it was interesting. It was more interesting. It was suspenseful, but I would not say it's like Blair Witch Scary or Hell House LLC Scary, not in that universe. I'm gonna give this a 6.5. A six
Okay.
and a half tapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's a solid film to suggest for people to check out, especially like I said, if they like those other films, or if they're like, like I know this is a big one for you is the in the woods stuff in general. Like those setups really work really well. And
Yeah.
so I think if you're a fan of found footage movies like that, then this is probably a pretty good
Cronewood and some of those, although the end is totally different. But so these people go in search of the answers of this tragedy. And I assume it's okay to spoil this now. So
yeah, we'll go into spoilers. Yeah, if you haven't seen this yet, it's on Tubi. You can watch it on Tubi.
Yeah. And so they go in search of this investigative team. It's kind of vague at first who has hired them to do this investigation. But it's this team of 4, and you do kind of know off the bat who survives based on who they're interviewing at the beginning. So it takes a little bit of the suspense away. But you pretty quickly get the feel that something is off. One, they say it a couple times, like something strange, something doesn't make sense.
But it's just weird. Yeah,
they're getting a lot of weird vibes. They go to meet the like one of the first things they do is to go meet the husband of the woman who died. And the person who drove them there starts acting weird and like drives away.
Throws all their stuff out of the car.
Yeah, and just like suddenly drives away. I would say there were a couple moments, and maybe I would have rated it higher if not for these. There were a couple moments that just felt sort of awkward, and maybe I don't know if it was something that was getting lost in translation, but there were things that like happened too fast. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining what I mean by that, but like there were just things where, pacing wise, it maybe seemed a little bit off. Like all of a sudden she just like drives away, which is weird.
Because she hadn't been acting weird prior to that.
Yeah.
So what was the trigger? Like it was such a it was the fine piece of the puzzle, but it needed to. Yeah, I agree. The pacing on that felt a little too abrupt.
And then one of the creepiest things, actually, now that I think of it, one of the creepier things about this movie was the use of this ringtone on the cell phone, and which rings a bunch of times, and there's one of the guys is like hiding who it is that's calling them over and over and over again. But the tone, it sort of reminded me, it's a different sound, but what the piano keys do in like the Hell House movies, like it's just sort of a weird, repeating, ominous sound over and over again. They use it pretty well in this movie, and they use it again later on in the movie pretty effectively. So they go out and then of course they have to set up a tent, and they have to spend the night, and they're on their own, and like first night in, and they wake up and one of the guys is already gone. Morning. Happens like really.
And they find like this symbol on the trees around them.
So they started getting Blair Witchy feel, like it's not stick men hanging from the trees, but it's symbols carved into trees and painted on rocks, and so you're getting like, okay, what's this going on? One of the two guys disappears almost immediately. Of course, they've been filming all night outside of the tent, and so they're able to see, he's the sound guy, they're able to see that he sort of wanders away. Which I guess one problem I did have, that there were at least a few shots in this movie that it's the whole like, who the heck was filming that shot? Now I question, because they're supposed to be filmmakers, if the idea is that it was intentional, like, so they're literally all 4 of them walking towards a camera or at some point, and unless they intentionally set that up to be like for dramatic effect, it's definitely pulls you out of the found footage aspect of this movie, because who the hell is filming them?
Yeah, because it's not one of those things where we see them set it up and then we see them in front of it. It just
Yeah.
happens. I know what you mean. Yeah,
It was a cool shot. It actually was a cool shot, but like it did make sense. They did that a couple of times. Small things, but we're found footage nerds, so we talk about those things.
Well, we notice those things.
We notice those things.
Mhm.
So, geez, what they pretty much happens like incredibly fast at this point. They chase after this guy. They find a baby carriage like up in a tree, which is weird, strange, obviously. So they think they found wherever the baby was last seen, but for some reason the carriage is way up in a tree. So they pull out a map. They try to find a way out because they can't find this guy who's missing. They find a house, which is not really a house. It's an abandoned building. Oh, they're also hearing classic sort of found footage trope. They're hearing weird sounds out in the woods the whole time, like screaming animalistic sound.
The sounds were good though. Like as far as the quality and like the ooh kind of factor, like those, I felt like the sounds were pretty good. Cause like I will tell you, that's something else that can pull me right out of something. If you go through the effort of putting that in a film and it doesn't land, it can make everything so cringy. Because you're just like, ooh, that sounds kind of silly, you know. But I thought the sound design was pretty good. And I say, you know, we really, until we get to like the bigger part at the very end, there isn't anything to see except for this one scene that I had to rewind because I missed it. And it was one of the girls is facing trees.
Yeah.
And it seemed like when I was watching it, all of a sudden she started running away, freaking out. The other two were at the house.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, what did I miss? Like I had to rewind it. And then I saw the hands go up the tree and I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. That was so creepy.
That was very creepy. Yep.
That's probably my favorite shot of the film because I was so hyper focused because I missed it the first time because it's very subtle.
Yeah.
But it's still there, obviously. But it was like, it got me. Like, because that to me, climbing like that as humanoid or whatever you want to call it, is like the same way that I feel about crawling on the ground. Like it's so creepy to me. So
there were, I think that's sort of what I mean. Like there were pacing wise, there were a couple things that were too subtle. Like, and all of a sudden, like they were running through the woods, or all of a sudden they were really upset about something, and it just like things. A couple of instances, things just sort of like happened just too fast, and again, maybe if you know, if I wasn't losing something in translation, I wouldn't have missed those things. But yeah, that was a thing. So
I will say, I think the reason that felt the way it did towards probably like the third act, at least for me, was because of the info dumping that was happening.
Yep.
So we kind of went from, and this is actually kind of a common thing too. We know nothing, and then all of a sudden we know a lot of things. But so it was kind of like, we went from not really knowing what was going on, just that something was amok. And we're missing this person and there's weird things that we're hearing, but we still don't really have like any idea what's going on. And then it was like they got to the building and then it was like tons of information all at one time. So when those events started to happen, they felt a little discombobulated, I think.
Yeah, they were like listening to audio, like recordings and reading papers, and
it's like a video game.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that whole scene felt like that.
Yeah.
The creature, I wasn't exactly sure, you know, what they're describing. Was this supposed to be like a vampire or like Bat Boy or like some sort of zombie flesh-eating monster, just a person who escapes from an asylum? It was really hard to tell what it was supposed to be.
Because they were doing something to it, but like it didn't really say. Yeah. You know what it reminded me of? And I don't know if this was intentional or if it's just maybe pulled from like this. And have you ever heard of The Rake?
No.
Well, if you ever want to scare yourself, go to Creepypasta and read about The Rake. And The Rake is a made up creature, like cryptid or whatever, but it looks exactly like this, almost. Very pale skin, all one kind of like I don't know how to, not piece, but like where everything just looks like it's all the same texture kind
Yeah.
of. And that like crawling and the coloration, like it really reminded, and I find the concept of rakes to be absolutely terrifying because they look scary based off the drawings and stuff that I've seen but anyway, but that's what it kind of reminded me of. I will say, I think they did a pretty good job of not like, we really didn't get to see it super, super clear until a couple times right before the end, but I thought it was still, that part, I didn't feel like they overshowed. I felt like we still got to see it enough that we felt like the wait was worth it, but not so much that we got over it too quickly. You know what I mean?
There was another moment, I just realized what it was, at towards the end where it would happen too fast, and they were showing it, and I'm focused on the creature, and it's when the girls are running away at the end, right? And there's 3 of them. The guy is still there too, and I see the creature, and then all of a sudden the girls are running away, but the guy wasn't with them, and it was like I didn't see him get attacked. I don't know if I missed something, but they sort of like, I don't know, like just said he got attacked, or I don't know. Did they actually even show that? That was confusing to me. Do you remember?
I'm trying to think. I know there's the scene under the floorboards when they find.
Yep. Right after that.
It's right after that, right?
Yeah. Comes back up, and then all of a sudden the thing's screaming and chasing them, and
right, because I think that's one of the things when we get the last couple of seconds of like the interview style part of it, where they're like, yeah, and they all said, they're like, oh, well, they said that's what happened, but they don't know, they didn't catch it, they didn't see it, they don't know, so they kind of left it open. And honestly, I will say this. While it did seem kind of out of nowhere because they went from being together to not being together, I wonder if that was probably a choice because, we talk all the time about when you're doing a lower budget film, what you maybe shouldn't do on camera because it can make, so, but I think maybe going into that, it could have been he got maybe snagged on the door with his camera or something, and then at least referencing the fact that he can't keep up with them. So that then when he's not there, that makes sense. Because it was like, you're right though. It was like he was there and then all of a sudden he wasn't. And then they were like, yeah, we don't know what happened to him.
A little confusing. Yeah. I mean, not a huge deal, but a little confusing. But, and the 2 women escape. They get by the road. Someone picks them up. And then what's interesting, and I don't know, what's interesting is that they are blamed or they're not believed. People think they're sensationalizing, this other woman's death, and they're using it to get famous, basically.
Yeah.
And that supposedly there's no evidence, although I would argue there's a ton of evidence because everything is on camera, including the creature that they're saying did all of this. They caught it on camera. So that was a little bit hard to believe, but maybe that's actually what would happen if this was like a real situation. People would probably try to discount it.
Because they tried to find proof of the company that they said hired them, and they couldn't find any proof of them. Yep. They also connected their driver to it. So like she had gone by different names, and she had been like kind of a part of it in some way. As far as getting them there or whatever.
Yeah, she denied. She said she was like an actress. So it's clearly like this is all engineered.
That's right. Yeah. She said she was part of their plan or something. Yeah. Oh, yes. I forgot about that. You're right.
So clearly it was like a setup. But so that's how the movie ends. It's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're sort of like interested in, found footage movies, horror movies from other countries. It's really cool. You get to see a lot of Sweden in it. It's good. It's a solid found footage movie.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Especially like I always love when this happens on like random ones that we find, because it's like I said, like I don't know how we missed this one last year.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I wonder if it wasn't. Sometimes a movie will say it's released one year, but it's actually not available to the public until a little bit later. See that a lot.
Yeah. Actually. Well, and it might have been released in Sweden in 2022,
That's
but
right.
maybe we didn't get it in the States until this year or later. Or whatever.
Reportage November just appeared this November on Tubi, perhaps. I'm guessing. I don't know that.
Yeah. No, I really liked this one. I thought, and again, we talked about this. It just has so many of the things that we like and things that work for us. Things that we have in common and things we don't have in common. I do think that, just as like a small shout, I do think The Devil's Past does some of these themes a little bit better, a little more in depth. But I think that what they were able to do with this film was effective. And I mean, it's definitely like, how like sometimes we'll watch something and not even just found footage, but like in general, and you just don't really remember it.
Oh yeah.
Like, and it's like, and it hasn't even been that long. Like it's been like a week and you're like, yeah, I don't remember. Like, this is not one of those movies. This is a movie that I remember. I can visualize the things that happened and the characters and the story. And so I think that, that's kind of like my comparison of like, that if that's the case, then that means it kept me engaged and I probably enjoyed the experience, because a lot of stuff I forget. There was one we talked about, we haven't covered it on the show, but we were messaging about, and you said, I can't remember. I think I've seen that one, but I don't remember it. And I said, yeah, in about 3 months, I won't remember it either.
I mean, we've watched, even just on this, doing this show, I don't know how many we've watched at this point. If you add in the movies we've done episodes on, we're into like the 60s, I think, at least.
We are.
And then there was that whole month that we originally did of found footage, which was 30 movies or so, which are a lot of repeats, but like we've watched a lot. A lot's getting lost.
And yeah, and what was crazy is I would like to be able to do a found footage month again, but life has gotten so much busier since back then.
Yeah.
And it's like, but yeah, to be able to remember all the one, like, I mean, I think I've seen stuff all the time, and then I watch it and I'm like, I don't remember a single thing.
See, I'm the other way around. Like I won't recognize the title or the cover, and then the second I start watching, I'm like, oh, I've seen this. Yeah, that happens all the time.
That's happened to me too. It's typically the other way though. It's like there have been so many things that I've been like telling people I have seen. The Den was one of them. That's a found footage.
Yeah.
I've been saying, yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen that. No, I haven't. Like I watched it and I was like, I haven't seen this. I watched it recently, but I watched it for one of my October first watches or whatever. But I was so sure I had seen it, and then I went to watch like the trailer, and I was like, I don't think I have watched it.
Yeah, there's a lot that just sort of sound the same. I mean, there's a lot that kind of pull from other found footage movies. So that happens.
Yeah, but no, I think this is one that you'll remember after you watch it, at least for a little bit, because it is got some really familiar things, but there's enough about it I think that makes it unique that you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, I would recommend this. Go see this one. It's also free. It's on Tubi.
Yeah, so there's literally no excuse not to watch it. But yeah, what are we watching next week?
Next week we're watching a big one that we should have done forever ago, and it's one of the scariest found footage movies out there. We are going to finally cover Ganjam Haunted Asylum.
Yeah.
Finally.
And it's free on everything.
It's everywhere.
I recommend, if you have YouTube Red, watching it on YouTube, because that means no ads. But otherwise, it's on everything. So get freshed up.
Get going.
That's what we're going to talk next week. So.
All right. We'll see you then.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's our thoughts on Reportage November. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on this episode of Found Footage Fridays. Have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy your week coming up. And Tom and I will see you next Friday.
See you next week.